Hey everybody, my name is Jesus, and in this video I'm going to show you how I captured this shot, what edits I did in Lightroom, and how I retouched it in Photoshop. So this image here on the screen is actually the inspiration for the full-length shot. The dance teacher had asked specifically that she wanted a pink background for her close-up shots, and then she also wanted a white background for the full-length shots. So after doing the headshots, we started with the headshots and I saw the pink background, and I knew that I was going to be shooting on a white background, but when I saw how colorful everything was coming out, I thought, you know what, I think we should probably try to keep that same theme with the full lengths. And so I decided to throw some color to the shadows. This is not an original idea. I've seen this done before, and I'm sure you have as well. But I had never done it before, and I simply suggested to the dance teacher, is this something that you might maybe want to be interested in trying out? And she said, yeah, let's do it, let's experiment. She was really cool about it. So I set up two Evolve 200s to add gels for color, and then I knew that I wanted to do a hard light source to contrast the soft light source of the close-up shot. So in this image here, you can kind of get an idea of what it looked like when I first set them up. I know it's hard to see, but here you can see where the Evolve 200s are. These were set to group D, and I had them in firing at about f4. And the reason they're in group D is because I had, since I was doing also the headshots, my A light didn't change. It was the main shot. My B light was actually the fill. My C was actually two Explore 400s that I was using to light the pink background. So in order to go back and forth without having to make so many different changes, I went ahead and put these Evolve 200s on group D so that I can go back. Each person that came in, we did their close-up shot first, and then we did their full length. So this is the reason for the group D. So this is where they're set up, and I know it's very difficult to see, but right above is the Rapid 600 HSS. This one was my A light. And in this case, I set it to about f4.5 or f5, right around in there. I didn't really meter these a whole lot. Really, I went by what I felt looked good. Here's another view of that, where you can kind of see where the subject was standing and kind of what they saw. The main light in the middle was about 8 feet up on a boom stand, and then the other two lights were set at about 6 to 6.5 feet high, maybe 7 feet. Depending on the pose of the dancer, I would raise or lower the lights so that I could get the correct shadow behind them. Here's the first test shot of this dancer. This is Dariana, and she, basically I said, go ahead and stand there in the center, let me see what this looks like. I fired my first shot, and this is what it originally looked at. I knew that I wanted to be shooting at about 5.6, so I had my camera set to f5.6 ISO 100. And this was what I got with those settings, and right off the bat I knew this is gonna be really cool. It's gonna look really great. I just kind of tweaked it a little bit. I turned on the center light, and you can see how it kind of washed out everything. And here's another shot of that. Kind of, she was trying to get her pose going. And here's where I realized that this was gonna be just fine. I had enough color there that I could tweak in Lightroom. I think later on, for the next person or the person after that, I think I went for a little bit more saturated look right out of the camera. But in this example, I'm showing you the very first person that was photographed. So here we see it again. Here she's starting to try a pose. She said she wanted to do some sort of jumping shot, and this is the pose that we ended up going with. So this is the photograph that I went ahead and worked on. So here in Lightroom, exposure was fine. I didn't really mess that a whole lot. I wasn't sure. I kind of skipped these for now. I came back to them. What I really went straight forward to was a tone curve, and I just kind of adjusted this a little bit just to give it a little bit more contrast, bump it up my highs and drop my lows, just simple S curve. And right off the bat, I started seeing what I wanted, the look that I was going for. So I went ahead and came to the HSL and immediately attacked the blue. And I think I gave it a lot, made it a little bit more blue right about here. And I increased a little bit of the luminance because I didn't want it to be super dark. I still wanted it to be nice and bright and airy, kind of like that pink color. Then I went to the red, and again, I kind of made it a little more pink here. I increased the saturation, brought the hue down a little bit, give it a little bit more pink, and then I increased the luminance right about there. So that kind of got me to where I wanted it, where I thought was a good starting point. Going back up, I went ahead and added a little bit of clarity, and a little bit of vibrance as well, and that's kind of starting to kind of come together a little bit better. And I added maybe a little bit of contrast, just a tiny bit. So this is where we were kind of left with in Lightroom, and I knew that I was ready to move on to Photoshop. And here we are in Photoshop. So the very first thing that I do is I always duplicate the layer. I use a lot of shortcuts, so what I did is Command J, and that creates a new layer for me. And when I'm taking my time, I will label my layers, or I will give them a name, but for this purpose I'm just going to leave it as layer 1, and I can see what are the things that I need to fix. Well, first of all, I know that I need to get rid of this top part here. I need to kind of fill this in and get rid of this shadow. This is for my ceiling fan, and again, this may be cropped, so it's not super important, but more importantly, at the bottom here where you can see I don't have a cyc wall in my studio, so I kind of fake that look with some tile board at the bottom, give it a little bit of reflection. So I know that I want to get rid of this line here, and I want to get rid of this line back there. Very simple. I use the healing tool. I have specific shortcuts set up on my keyboard so that I don't have to be moving my left hand back and forth on the keys. For me, I have my healing tool set to letter A, and I can adjust the size and the hardness up and down depending here. What I'm doing to control the size here is pressing on Control and Option at the same time. And I can adjust the size by moving my mouse to the left and to the right. And I can also control using my shortcut keys Q and W. I know that by default we use the bracket keys, open and close. But again, I don't want my hand moving back and forth. I want to be able to do this without looking down at my hand. So right above the A is the Q, and I can press that or the W and brings it up. Same thing with the brush tool. The brush tool for me, normally it's on by default it's letter B. For me, I have it set to letter E because it's right next to the Q and the W. So here's my brush tool. I have my stamp, which is S, and I have my healing brush, which is A. So using my healing brush, I will select a point to sample from because I think that it's a little bit faster. So I'm just keeping it close by right here and making sure that everything kind of lines up with the reflections that are there. By the way, I do want to point out that I am using a Wacom pen tablet. The tablet that I use is the Wacom Intuos Pro, which looks like this. And I use the small, and the reason why I like the small is because I don't use the entire surface of the tablet to edit. What I do is I set a small area and I work within that area, and it just makes things work a lot faster for me instead of having to move my arm back and forth. Just like I have my shortcut keys, I want to be able to be very quick and not waste any time going back and forth. And it doesn't seem like it would be a lot of time, but just, you know, wasting a second or two every time you have to look around or go back and forth, it just adds up after, you know, when you have to do a lot of images. Going back to the image here, again in the background, the same thing. I'm going to select the source area that I want to, and again I'm following the shadow, the line of the shadow, just to make sure that it kind of looks, it makes sense. I don't want to, you know, sample an area that is going to create a different color or a different shadow. And you can kind of see it here. If I sample, let's say from over here, and I start going this way, you know, there's going to be an interruption to the shadow here. So I don't want to do that. So Command Z to undo, and I'm going to stay right in this area here. And I'm going to, again, just make sure that everything is lined up and very carefully. I can zoom in a little bit here by pressing the Z key back to A for my healing tool. And again, this is getting really picky here. And this might be time consuming, but again, with the shortcuts that I have and set aside, it just makes things a lot simpler, a lot easier. I'm going to go ahead and just clean up a little bit here. I may use the spot healing tool for this, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and leave the tool that I have set. And again, it just goes pretty quickly here. There's a little bit of hair here. Of course, dancers are moving quickly, and you know, we got a little bit of hair on the floor there. And this is pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and speed up this portion of the video so that you don't have to watch me do all this work. Okay, so there we go. We have everything's been retouched. The only thing like I mentioned before was probably that I would do next would be to do a little bit of dodge and burning. just to kind of highlight or emphasize things. It could be anything from shadows on the cheeks to maybe a little bit of shadows on the abs here. It's really up to taste with the dodge and burn. But I'm good with this the way it is now. I'm gonna go ahead and hit save and bring it back into Lightroom. So here we are with this image. The floor's been cleaned up as well as the very top. And what I wanted to do now is just go to the tone curve and actually go to the colors. So here we are on the red channel, and I'm just kind of tweaking this a little bit more just to kind of give it a little bit more, you know, a little bit more stylized, a little bit more color. And again, all I'm doing is just creating S curves with all of these individually. And here we are on the blue. And again, this is just making this image really stand out. Hitting the backslash key, I can see a before and after. And I can see the contrast has gone up as well as the color. So I'm very happy with the way this is looking. I'm gonna go ahead and one more time, again on the HSL, I'm gonna tweak the colors a little bit more. I'm on the red channel right now, red color right now. Bring this back a little bit more pink, a little bit more saturation. Kind of lighten that up a little bit. And again, the same thing with the blue. Give it a little bit more saturation, but I want a little bit more blue and a little bit lighter, not so dark in the background. One of the important things to remember is having a good capture to start with, having a great image to start with. And so I believe that that's what we started off here with this image. I was very happy right off the bat, and I knew that going into the retouching and the editing of the colors, it would be really, really simple for me to do, and it wouldn't take a whole lot to make this image look great, because it already was a great image. So I've worked with this dance school before, and I'd like to thank them for coming back to me every single time. And every single time that we work together, we've created different images. The teacher and the dancers are all extremely talented, and they're very fun to work with. And I'm always able to create fantastic images for them. So I'm really, really thankful for them. If you have any questions about the edits that I did, or maybe an additional question to how this image was captured, by all means, drop them in the chat box. I really appreciate you. I hope you guys have a great day. Don't forget, remember to hit the like button and subscribe so that I can keep making more videos just like this for you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next video.